Hi, my name is Sara Kranzler, and I'd like to share some thoughts on Parshat Vayikra. Vayikra opens with the pasuk Vayikra Moshe Vaydaber Hashem Elav. There's a calling out to Moshe, and then the beginning of a conversation. The Eish Kodesh says, what is this beginning with a calling out? He says it's a calling out of rachamim, of mercy. And why is calling out representative of mercy? He says, well, the idea that calling out reflects empathic mirroring and understanding is best encapsulated by the Paitan, by the poet who wrote the ULTorah, which is a poem that we say after the second Ashrei in the morning services. And the Paitan, the poet, writes about this calling out, the kara zeh el zeh. Jews are calling to one another, this human, interpersonal calling between one another. And the Taz explains that this calling out between one another that the Paitan's describing is really an empathic, mirroring calling. It's this calling out in pain of one Jew, of one person, and the response of another of understanding this pain and responding and needing to respond to this pain or to the struggle of an individual. And then we pass this on via Mar, and we say, and the Malachim are there, Mekablim Dimidain, they're there as the receptors for our empathy, and they too, they pass it on, they mirror our empathy towards God. So He becomes this Balarachamim, this merciful one. This idea of calling out being an expression of empathic mirroring reminds me of the research done by Beatrice Beebe. Beatrice Beebe looked into the psychology of infant communication and the importance of infant communication. When a child is sad, the child begins to cry, and the mother responds with mirroring, "Aww." And when the child is happy, the mother responds with happiness and with joy and with smiling and reflects the child's smile back to the child in understanding and empathic mirroring. And this empathic mirroring for the child is essential to the child's sense of self and emotional development. According to self-psychology, a need for mirroring is not limited to infancy. It's a need throughout our lifespan to feel mirrored, to feel understood, to feel deep empathy from one another. I think when there's this Vayikra, therefore, this calling out El Moshe, it's God mirroring empathy that humans feel for one another. It solves for me a dilemma that I have. I often need to relate to God in a very relational type of way, to have a relationship with God. At the same time, I struggle with the fact that I know anytime I'm having a relationship with God, I'm anthropomorphizing Him. But to understand God as simply a reflection of humans and to be very much rooted in the human experience also speaks to my understanding that it is not God who is empathic or who has an emotion, but rather it is His ability to relate and to be present to my need for relatedness, my psychological needs. It's interesting that we enter the Sefer and the Parsha, Vayikra, with this empathic, connected, mirroring moment and calling. Because we enter Parsha Vayikra to a discussion of karbanot, of sacrifices. According to Rav Hirsch, sacrifice is the wrong translation. It's a misinterpretation of the word korban. Korban is not about sacrifice. It's about kiruv. It's about closeness. The root of korban is kuf resh bet, like krav, like closeness. And so when we bring the korban olah, this is reflected as well. The korban olah is a confusing korban. It's not clear why we're bringing the korban olah. It's a korban in which we give the whole thing unto the mizbeach, whole thing to God, and we get no cuts. And the Nachmanides explains that the reason we bring this korban is reflected, interestingly, in the pasuk v'samach yado rosh ha'alav v'nirtza lo v'chaper alav. We put our hands onto the korban olah, and it's used for us as a method of gaining forgiveness. And Nachmanides points out that this forgiveness is unique. Forgiveness really belongs to the category of Karban Chatat. Really, when we sin, we should get forgiveness through bringing the sin offerings. But the Olah represents another level of forgiveness, a level of connectedness. When we sin on purpose, Nachmanides says, we can be given through Yom Kippurim, through the atonement of Yom Kippur. But still, there's something that's been impacted. That our relationship with God is no longer the same. And so the Korban Olah is a gift. It's a gift that says, I want back into this closeness, into this relationship, into this empathic calling that we have between God and between people. Rav Hirsch also explains this Olah as a way of reconnecting to God of Krav. He says the Korban Olah is actually a replacement for a mitzvah that we didn't have the opportunity to do. You didn't sit in the sukkah, you didn't pick up the lulav, you missed that opportunity. You missed the opportunity to show up for God, just like missing an opportunity interpersonally, missing the opportunity to show up to somebody's party, to somebody's event, to somebody's basketball game, to somebody, whatever it is. And so we bring the gift as a way of saying, I want to be present. And I want to be able to be a participant in this relationship. And so I think the first korban that we have does in fact encapsulate in many ways this idea of krav, closeness. So as we begin Shabbat, I wish you a Shabbat of perceived and received empathy and experience of relatedness. Shabbat Shalom.